Dear students, welcome to our fourth lecture. Today we'll discuss features of Germanic languages. As we know, Germanic languages form a group in Indo-European languages family. And the Indo-European language family is a family of languages were spoken by an important part of Europe and Asia, to say nothing of North America and Australia. Indo-European language family was identified in the 18th and 19th centuries after great efforts of linguists, scholars, anthropologists, and others. The Indo-European family contains about 149 languages, which are classified into 11 subgroups. Of the 11 subgroups, one of them is Germanic, where English comes from. The concept is linguistic. The term is geographic. We mean here Indo-European. Easternmost India and westernmost Europe and Indo-European family. Now a few words about features of Indo-European language. Indo-European morphology was morphologically, Indo-European was the family. The proto-language is reconstructed with three or cases which indicate grammatical and semantic distinction. As in the form of its reconstructed form, Indo-European morphology was very complicated. As we see, there were about 9 cases, and the structured word was also very complicated. Proto-Indo-European, considered a fusional language, is a language where nouns, adjectives, pronouns indicate their grammatical relationship to other words in a sentence and mark gender and number agreement among words and phrases. There were the following cases in Proto-Indo-European: nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative, locative, instrumental, and vocative. I think we have some information about these cases, which you discussed last year in the course of theoretical grammar of the English language. I'm going to repeat the names of those cases, grammatical cases: nominative, genitive, dative, ablative, accusative, locative, instrumental, and vocative. Nominative case corresponds to common case in the English language. Genitive case corresponds to possessive case of nouns in English. Dative case corresponds to there is no case in the English language corresponding to this. Dative meaning of the dative case is expressed by the help of preposition plus noun. Accusative case corresponds to Russian vinitelny, Uzbek tüşüm kelişigi. Ablative is also doesn't exist. It is expressed by means of the preposition and noun in modern English. Locative case is case forms express the place of performing an action. And instrumental case is expressed by the help of the preposition with and the noun in English. Vocative case is a case when it is used to call somebody. They use the noun had vocative case form. And syntax of Indo-European proto-language had the following features. In Proto-Indo-European, there was a variety of syntactic patterns from different languages, because those 11 families had their features even in the Proto-Indo-European, and those 11 languages had the status of dialects of Proto-Indo-European language. And the syntax of their languages were different. To say, we can say the same about the morphological structure of those 11 dialects of Proto-Indo-European, and such as modern English and French and other Indo-European languages. Word order is not a grammatical device. Word order was not a grammatical device in Proto-Indo-European as it is in modern English. Word order and case endings like in modern English. See? It means only in one case. In the English language, we have only noun, subject, predicate, object structure. Proto-Indo-European, the case was a bit different. They had subject, verb, object, verb, etc., etc. Object, verb, subject also. Next, grammatically, fix elements in a sentence. In modern English, like in modern English, we usually find this in modern English, while in Proto-Indo-European, word order had no uh, important status because of the lot of morphological means of expressing grammatical meaning. The place of the word doesn't matter. It had its case endings, number endings, etc., etc. Therefore, it was not so important where the word is coming at the beginning, at the end, or at the end of the word. See? Now, a few words about how scholars began investigating the languages called Germanic group of languages. The earliest information about Germanic tribes we find in the works of Pythias. Pythias was a Greek traveler of the 4th century of our era. Strabo was a Greek geographer, traveler. He lived in 63 before Christ, 20 AD, Anno Domini, our era. Next, Pliny the Elder. He was a Roman writer. He lived in the 23rd, 79th centuries AD. Then Julius Caesar, Roman Emperor. He lived in the 144th centuries before Christ century, and fifth Cornelius Tacitus, Roman historian. He lived in 55th and 120th centuries of our era. In the course books, in the writings, we meet one more name used for in relation to Germanic languages. That is Teutonic. The word Teutonic was the synonym of the word Germanic. Germans were called as Teutons, and Teutonic languages meant Germanic languages. Teutonic culture meant Germanic culture, etc. And Pythias, Strabo, or Pliny the Elder, Julius Caesar, Cornelius Tacitus. These were the people who wrote about Germanic languages, Germanic tribes. They had immediate contacts with people speaking Germanic languages. They met the Germanic tribes. They learned their ways of living, economical features, cultural features, and their language. Therefore, what they wrote is taken as something which was true to life of those periods. Though they lived in different centuries, some of them lived before our era and some after our era, first 5 centuries of Christian era. And therefore, we can refer to the works of these authors as they were the contemporaries of those Germanic-speaking tribes. These authors and other scholars of those years distinguished the following types of ancient Germanic tribes: Vindils, Ingveones, Iskevones, Herminones, Pevkins, and Hilleviones. Of course, we cannot say today from what of these 6 tribes they were not tribes. They were, to be more correct, we can say that they were these Vendils, Ingveones, and other names were tribal groups, or the names given to tribes by Roman and Greek authors. They gave them these names, these tribal groups. They because Germanic tribes did not call themselves as we are Vendils or we are Ingveones or some with other names. They had their own names. We know more than 100 uh, Germanic tribes. Names survive to our days, but we have no time to name all of these 100 names. Students can find information about these facts in all the course books I recommended, and we can go on with our statements, with our problem. And I was saying that no other Germanic speaking people can say that. For example, English people cannot say we developed from Ingveones or Isthveones, etc., etc. It was impossible because changes of tribal groups, wars between them, or common military raids, etc., etc., influenced the social life of the tribes speaking Germanic languages, and therefore their history become very complicated uh, in those years. That is at in eve of our era and in the first 5 centuries of our era. There may arise one question: what happened to those Vendils, Ingveones, Iskavones, Herminones, Pevkins, and others? The thing is that tribe, from the dialects of the tribal group Vendils, they developed East Germanic languages, beginning with Gothic, Vendils, and others. From the tribal dialects of Ingveones, Iskavones, Herminones, and Pevkins, West Germanic languages developed. And from the dialects of the tribes Hilaviones, North Germanic languages tribe. This is a kind of bridge from Old Germanic tribes to modern Germanic languages, living Germanic languages. Now, when one deals with the great number of dialects, languages, etc., etc., when one deals with the languages, a group of languages, or of 15, 20, or I've just said dialects spoken by 100 Germanic tribes, he has to classify those objects. Now we're going to classify modern Germanic languages. Germanic languages are grouped into 3 groups: West Germanic languages, North Germanic languages, and East Germanic languages. There is no living East Germanic language. East Germanic languages are represented by the Gothic language, language of Vendils, Lombardian, Franks, etc., etc. Frankish language also is Germanic. Then one may ask, why did we include East Germanic languages into our classification consisting West Germanic languages and North Germanic languages? Can't we leave East Germanic languages alone without including it into our classification? The thing is that East Germanic languages were, how to say, were older than West Germanic and North Germanic languages, and we have a written record in the Gothic language, East Germanic languages, translation of the Bible written in the 4th century. And when we compare the facts of the history of West Germanic and North Germanic languages, we refer to the facts of the history of the Gothic language and compare their history and understand the causes of some linguistic processes, why these processes happened, how they happened, how was this form earlier, 500 years earlier, etc., etc. Therefore, we always include East Germanic languages. There is no South Germanic languages. Now West Germanic languages are English language, German language, Dutch, Frisian, Afrikaans, and Yiddish. English is the language we are learning. You are learning. German is the language spoken in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Luxembourg, etc. Dutch is the language spoken in the Netherlands, and it has one more name, Holland, which you know. Frisian language is spoken in the north of Germany and in the Netherlands. Next comes Afrikaans. About this we'll give a description later, and the Yiddish language, the new Jewish language spoken in Europe and America and in other places of the world, in other countries of the world. North Germanic languages include Norwegian language, Swedish language, Danish language, Faroese language, and Icelandic language. Norwegian language is spoken in Norway. Swedish language is spoken in Sweden and Finland. Danish language is spoken in Denmark, mainly, and in the Greenland. Faroese Island is spoken in the Faroe Islands, which are to the north of the Shetland Islands, which are to the north of the British Islands. Some people say that the Faroese language is the dialect of the Danish language. The Faroese people say that their language is a separate language. Next comes Icelandic language. Icelandic language spoken in on the island Iceland. We can say a few facts. We can say it's extra linguistic. For example, there is one language which is very close to the English language out of these 11 languages. Some people, some students begin naming German, Norwegian, etc. etc. That's not right. Structurally to the English language is the Frisian language. Why Frisian language? Because if you remember names of the tribes which migrated to the British Isles in the 4th century, 5th century, you can easily find the answer. Angles, Saxons, Jutes, and Frisians. And this language, Frisian language, spoken in Europe, is the language which of those people who did not migrate to the British Isles. And the Frisian people who migrated to the British Isles made their own contribution to the formation of the English language. And therefore, Frisian language is the closest to the English language. Now, we can ask such a question: which language is very innovative grammatically, structurally, etc. etc. Some people say German, Dutch, Afrikaans, Norwegian, etc. That's wrong. The answer is the English language is very innovative because of its use throughout the planet. It came to the contact with many other languages. As a result of those contacts, the English language developed rapidly, and it acquired new features which are absent in other Germanic languages. Therefore, it's very innovative language. And the question, which language is the antonym of the English language in this case, that is very archaic, very conservative. A very conservative or archaic language among these living Germanic languages is Icelandic language. Icelandic language, you can ask why. It's because if you just remember geographical situation where the people speaking Icelandic language live, you can easily find an answer. Iceland is in the Atlantic Ocean between Atlantic and North Arctic Ocean, and thousands of kilometers to the north and to the south, to the west and to the east. No islands we can find. As a result of this isolation, and life in the isolation for centuries made the language be stable, and the development of the Icelandic language became very slow, very slow. Therefore, the language spoken in the 10th century, written records written in the 10th century can be easily read and understood by the educated modern Icelanders. See, sir, this fact we cannot observe with any other languages, to say nothing of the English language. Next question is, which language is grammatically, typologically the most Germanic language? You can answer. Students give different languages, but the answer is the most Germanic language. That is the language which has the features of the Germanic languages is the German language. Because German language has the basic conservative, those case forms, gender forms, other forms. A very complicated grammar inherited by common Germanic and common in the European period. And the question, which language has the features of Germanic language to the less extent? It is, we can say that this language is very, it's not, some people say that this language is not Germanic because it has already lost features of Germanic languages. Language do you think is it? The answer is the English language is the less Germanic language. It has lost many features of Germanic languages as a result of the contact with the Romance languages in Middle English period. Therefore, it became not similar to other Germanic languages in many cases. It became similar to Romance languages. Now, Old Germanic tribes. Old Germanic tribes we mentioned of Vindels, Ingviones, Iskavones, Pefkins, Hilaviones, Herminones. Later, as a result of the context of the people speaking different tribal languages, tribal dialects that into languages, they developed new languages, many languages, and out of them we mentioned those 11 languages and the Gothic language, which died out. The Germanic tribes used three alphabets. First, the runic alphabet, second, Gothic alphabet, and Latin alphabet. Runic alphabet consisted of runes, that is, letters, texts, or inscriptions in Old Norse, that is, Old Northern language. It had one more meaning. It was a mystery or secret. In all Germanic languages, this alphabet was used to write something mysterious or secret words in this language, and it was used not by all the people, but only educated people and by some groups of religious or something like this. The runic alphabet, we know three types of this runic alphabet. Runic alphabet was used from the earliest period, for example, from the 2nd century to 20th century. See, 20 centuries, 2000 years, the runic alphabet has been used. For example, there were three groups of runic alphabet. The first was the Older Futhark. Older Futhark was used between 150 of our era to 800 year of our, or that is from the 1st to 8th centuries of our era, called Futhark. Futhark, why it's called Futhark? It's because Futhark was the first 6 letters of this runic alphabet. Second Futhark, the Anglo-Saxon Futhark, it was used from the 4th to 11th centuries in the British Isles. Uh, well, the Futhark was used not only in the British Isles, it was also used in Scandinavia and in the Northern Europe. And the third type of the runic alphabet was the Younger Futhark. It existed in from the 8th to 20th century. But Younger Futhark of the recent centuries were not used as a type of alphabet used by millions. It was used as a special alphabet for those sacral or other aims. Now, types of runic inscriptions include. How do we know that they existed, the runic alphabet? Relying on the analysis of the inscriptions, we can say that the following types of inscriptions existed. The first, gravestone inscription. Runic alphabet was aimed at writing. We cannot say writing, it's making inscriptions on hard objects like stone, woods, etc. etc. Therefore, the inscriptions like the gravestone inscription remained, if a bit changed. Next, religious magic inscription. Next, personal letters, rude messages, and art and craft signatures. Those art and craft signatures lived longer than those gravestone inscriptions, religious personal letters, because they were changed or replaced by other types of alphabets. What can we say about the features of the runic alphabet? The following notable features can be said about runic alphabet. The first, the direction of writing in early runic inscriptions is variable. They could write from left to right, from right to left. It depended on the desire of the writer. Next, later they settled down into a left to right pattern. From left to right pattern was established. Next, word divisions were not generally recognized in runic writing, although one or more dots were occasionally used for this function. As you see, they did not divide words. When they ended one word, they immediately began the second word without leaving space. Therefore, it was very difficult to read them if you don't understand the language, because dots had different other functions than pauses between words. Elder Futhark had 24 letters. Those Fehu denoted F, second letter Uruz, Aurochs meant Aurochs, Thurisaz, giant, third letter Ansuz, god, fourth letter Raithor, riding, and the last Kaunaz, okay. These four letters, and other we find here G, W, H, N, I, Y, I short, P, Z, S, T, B, Berkana, birds twig, E, M, L, Lagus, Ng, Ingus, D, Dahas, and O, Ophila. See, there were some letters we used to use like SH, sh, or CH. These phonemes were lacking, therefore they did not have corresponding letters. The second type of the alphabet was Gothic alphabet. Gothic alphabet was worked out in the 4th century by the Gothic bishop Wulfila when he translated the Bible from the Greek language into the Gothic language. And the Gothic people were the first people who had Bible, who read Bible in their own language, in Gothic language. Um, and uh, Wulfila took the translation of took the form of the Bible. He translated the Bible from ancient Greek. One can say, why didn't he take the Latin language? Because he was a Roman bishop. He knew Latin language perfectly well as the official language of the Roman Empire. The fact is that in the 4th century there was no Latin translation of the Bible. And when uh, Wulfila translated the Bible into the Gothic language, and the Gothic people began reading the Bible in their own tongue, in mother tongue, the Roman people, seeing it, were puzzled, were surprised. They said that how can it be that barbarous people like Goths are reading the Bible in their own language, in their mother tongue, and highly cultured people like Romans are still reading it in the Greek language, and they began translating it into the Latin language. But this appeared only 5th century, and it has a name Vulgata, vulgar Latin. And Wulfila needed an alphabet for his translation, for his language, for the Gothic language, because those runic letters would not perform this function, because they were aimed at writing on hard surfaces, but not on the paper or pergament. They and therefore he had to work out alphabet for the Gothic language, and he used the Greek alphabet, Latin alphabet, and some Gothic signs, and he worked out his letters of the Gothic alphabet. His letters were, you see, Ahsa, Berkan, Giba, Dags, but K, etc., etc. And these letters also had sound values. For example, Ahsa, A meant one, Berkan meant two, and on the table you can see sound values of these letters, and they were some letters were used to denote two, some letters denote three phonemes too, like Giba was used to denote G, N, and H. Dags was used to denote D and the, etc., etc. See, on the table you can see these things. And one letter had no phonetic value. It only denoted number, for denoting number, 90. And Gothic alphabet, after it was worked out by Wulfila, became widely used among Gothic-speaking people in Europe. And it ended its functioning, it stopped its functioning at about 9th and 10th centuries, when the Gothic language became dead. You know why? From the history. You know, from the history, how it did it happen? Those expansion wars, etc., etc., and migration of Goths to different parts of the world, to Western Europe, to north of Africa, etc., etc., made merging the Gothic people with other population, and as a result, the Gothic languages died out. The last people speaking Gothic language lived in the Crimea. About it we shall speak later. Next, third alphabet was the Latin alphabet. The Latin alphabet was a type of writing system. It was an alphabet. Direction of writing, right to left in the earliest periods. Then boustrophen, it was, or left to right. It has become boustrophédon later, from left to right, just like runic alphabet. Used to write Latin. It was firstly used for the Latin language, and after collapse of Roman Empire, when after 10th century languages became states were established for developed nations and countries became independent from Roman Empire. They began using Roman alphabet for their own languages. As you see, ancient Latin alphabet was a bit different from modern Latin alphabet. It was used for writing from right to left. That is all about general information about Germanic languages, ancient Germanic tribes, modern Germanic languages, and system of writing, old Germanic alphabets. Thank you for your attention.